everybody. This is G, and you're listening to the SITREP podcast. And today we have a full house. The entire command crew, plus a special guest, are with us today. So, as always, we have Chris.
Hello, everybody.
We have Ralph.
Hey, folks.
And we have Jim.
Hello and welcome. Sounds like they got the band back together again.
Yes, and we have a special guest, as I said, all the way from Chicago, Illinois, is Dawn, a presenter and writer with Beast of War on Tabletop.
Hello, everybody.
Hello, Dawn.
All right, so the last episode, it was just a small recon team. It was Jim and I, and it's really great to have everybody back at the table to talk about everything related to modern military gaming. We have a lot to cover today. We have new shows we got to talk about and all kinds of other great projects. So we're going to go ahead and dive right in, and we're going to start with hobby. And I'm going to let Chris, why don't you start off with us for us?
What have I been working on? I stripped my special artisan service miniatures Ukrainians because I wasn't happy with the paint job.
Wow.
So I restarted the paint job because I saw more news footage and stuff. So I was like, I don't want them to look like, I want them to look like this. So I stripped the paint off and started repainting them. I'm also working on a Shilka AA tank. And I think I've got, what else do I got? I got a BTR 90 going as well. So I've been pretty busy.
So what are you using to strip your models?
Was it Simply Green?
Okay. So
Yeah,
how
I
long do you
just-
have to soak it for?
I find I usually have to soak it. I soak it overnight, and then I take a light brush to it, and it comes off. So it's pretty good. But with some paint jobs, it's 24 hours.
Okay.
Yeah. But that's all I've been working on for modern. The rest of the stuff I've been working on is all World War II.
Chris, who's the... Sorry, Jim, there. Chris, who's the Shilka from? Which kid is it? Or is it something you did yourself?
I printed it. I'd have to find out who the guy that designed the STL is, because I don't have that information in front of me right now. But I can put it in the show notes.
It might be worth it.
Yeah.
It might be worth it for people who are interested in possibly printing their own, because I know there's a couple of companies out there. There's one based in the UK that does 3D prints. I know Empress do a resin one.
Yeah, they do a nice resin one.
Yeah,
I'll look it up and then I'll send it to G.
Sounds good.
So I'm assuming that this Shilka is in 28 millimeter.
Yeah, it's I printed it in 1/50th scale.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that I'm not terribly well versed in 3D printing technology, but I do know that with the limitations based on overhangs and things of that nature, and just knowing what a Shilka looks like, that had to be in obviously like several parts.
It's track sections are separate.
Okay.
Hull, turret, radar.
And then those four guns and the little lattice
the four
masts that
guns
kind of hold the four guns together.
Yeah, it's printed in 2 sections.
Okay.
Yeah. So that's pretty cool. I have to add the hoses for the water cooling, but because the model did not have those, but everything else is on there, so it looks really good.
Yeah, that part where the Shilka's 23 millimeter autocannons kind of meet the turret is just design wise very complicated.
Yes.
I mean, even in a regular model kit, that's always tough to put together.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to make some.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's going to look amazing, because Shilka is one of those vehicles that is it just looks mean.
Yeah. I want to do the Tunguska too.
Oh, there you go.
The more modern version.
Yep. That's the ZSU 30-6.
Yeah.
Is the yeah. So it's a 6-barreled 30 millimeter rotary cannon, as opposed to the 4. Oh, it has missiles as well.
Yeah, it has missiles as well.
Oh man.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Another vehicle I'm trying to figure out is the Terminator. And the Terminator is I believe, a T-72 chassis,
Mhm.
up armored with a 30 millimeter small autocannon turret, and I believe it's also got missiles as well. I believe it's a
Is that also for air defense or for?
no. It's an assault vehicle. It's like
Wow.
I think the development of it was during the Chechen War.
Right.
So yeah, that's my next vehicle that I'm trying to find and
That
build.
actually sounds pretty awesome. They probably took a look at battlefield usage and they said, okay, look, Shilkas fire in combat 100 times. Out of those 100 times, 99 of them they're shooting at ground targets.
Yeah,
We're using our anti-air vehicles as fire support vehicles much more often. Basically, modern day assault guns, as opposed to actual air defense. That's what it sounds like.
So,
It's pretty
Chris, how are
cool.
you going to use those in a game?
the Shilka I'm using for ground fire. The T90 I'm not sure about yet. And I think the Shilka I'm just going to use for ground fire. And I was thinking about doing a scenario where it's disabled out on the battlefield, and they're just trying to save the vehicle. And we'll see if I might do a thing where the vehicle gets to shoot, but it's limited to how much ammo it's got, or something like that. I just wanted to make it look like they're trying to get the vehicle repaired and out of there while it's being attacked.
It's based on a PT-76 light tank chassis, amphibious tank chassis. So those tracks are really thin.
Yeah,
I could definitely see a track snapping or coming off of those bogies.
that's what I was thinking.
Yeah, those things aren't meant to move very
You
quick.
could also have it as well that it's had some sort of electrical fault. So on a dice roll, the fault is fixed, and that's when you're able to use it as a platform.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking about doing, because I don't want it to be in working condition where because that's going to be a lot of firepower in a skirmish game. That's a bit much. But I want it to be more of an objective with the possibility of firing. So
2,300 23 millimeter cannon shells at 4,200 rounds a minute. I don't know what you're talking about. That's not.
What building?
I've got a one mounted in the back of a Ural truck, and it's just the 2 barrels. Just imagine 4 barrels. That's a technical you see in a lot of conflicts and a lot of movies, is the unofficial ZSU Toyota is what I call it. Yeah.
Just as a joke. Yeah, there's always 2. You see them in Syria, you see them in Libya, and so on. The 2, I can't remember the designation of the gun. It's the same 23 millimeter autocannon, just kind of bolted to the back of either a Toyota or another light truck of some kind.
Yeah. So that's what I've been working on.
Awesome.
It's just been working on that, and then working on a whole Hungarian army for World War II.
Nice.
So,
Nice.
and that's it.
How about you,
Chris? Well, I'm really happy. I finished my Humvee, which I think I posted some video up of.
It looks really good. You did a nice
It
job.
does look good.
Absolutely.
I'm really pleased with that. That's my first attempt at using an airbrush. Never used an airbrush before, so.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Oh, that was a good job then.
Wow.
Yeah. So I mainly for the airbrush was spraying the green and then taking a dust, like a sand color, and doing the camo. But I didn't map out the camo pattern that I used the sand color. I just did it by hand and by eye, just to make it look slightly different. So you see all of the Humvees, like the Spectre ones on their website, especially all in desert colors. And I thought, well, let's have something different. Let's have the green on it. So, and then I mounted the M2 remote turret on top. I wish I'd waited now though.
Why is that?
Because Spectre dropped off that, which we'll talk about in the news, their new anti-tank turret, basically the 30 millimeter with the Dragon launcher remote turret, which was like but we'll talk about that in the news and stuff. And then, of course, I'd finished the 4-man team that went with it, with the cane, with the furry hand grenade. Of course, you've got to have a special ops team with the furry hand grenade. I'm sorry,
Needs to be in the rule book. Yeah, airbrushes are great. I mean, once.
So I was really happy with that, and then I got.
I'm sorry, you're still there?
Yeah, I'm still as you were talking there, Jim. Sorry.
Oh, my bad. I'm sorry. Now, airbrushes, I find. I mean, it took me a while to get used to them because I started off, the old school with the paintbrushes or whatever.
Yeah.
Once you get used to the airbrush, number one, your miniatures are going to obviously look, I don't want to say better, but they're definitely going to look different. In some ways, they're definitely going to look better. Obviously, you still have to go over, your detail stuff with the brush. But what I find is the huge advantage is time. You will find yourself painting armies in like a weekend. The Desert Bolt Action Boot Camp I've been working on, the Army, that DAK, I've been kind of stalling on it lately, but I got to 60% mark in like 3 days. Not even like full days. 2 or 3 coats. You prime it black. You go zenithal with your base color. Now your shadows are already pre-built in to your paint job, and a little bit of extra zenithal on top with like a lighter color of whatever it is you're using. And the only other thing I would add about that is, and again, everyone probably already knows this, but just bear saying again, treat that airbrush like it's an actual pistol that you keep in your house. Because in every single time you use it, I don't care if it's for 5 minutes or 5 hours, take it apart and clean it. I've never had a problem with my Badger gravity-fed airbrush, my Renegade, and it's because I'm very obsessive with constantly taking it apart and cleaning every little bit of it, break it all the way down, clean everything, and put it back together and put it away dry. Otherwise, your valves are going to clog up, and you're going to have issues with it going forward.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't zinithal the Hummer because I'm not used to doing that yet, and I mainly got the airbrush because it's a cheap one. It's not cheap per se, but it's not your typical one. It's in the UK they sell them with their own sort of mini compressor that they use for cake decorating and stuff. So it's it's not a big expensive one, but it was just to dip my toe in the water, shall we say, to using it, to getting another tool. But I didn't zenithal the Humvee, and I still paint the minis hand paint anyway, because a lot of the stuff I'm doing is, especially on those ones, there's multicam on them.
Oh, that's true. Yeah. You can't do that.
Trying to do that. So I mainly got the airbrushing for priming. So instead of using an aerosol primer, which is what I normally use, I use Army Painter Black, Army Painter Grey, or I've primed up and started painting Task Force Nomad minis, which are the sort of the Afghan garbed special forces that Spectre do. And I primed them with skeleton bone because it was close to sand to give them, that type of base to then put all the other colours on top of them. But on top of that, I did go back in after I'd finished with it, and I bought some new last week. I got some Vallejo air colours in sets. So I got a set of wheeled and track sets. And what's really good about that is on the back of the box, it tells you how to use the colours, to get the wheel colours correctly and make it look all right. I picked up US Modern Desert. So it's a set of paints, all for the airbrush, that are basically for creating, desert schemes, just basically to play a desert colour. And the other one I picked up, which is the MERDC camo colours.
Okay, that's the old 80s 4-color stuff.
It is 4 colours, but I don't think it's 80s because on the front there is an M1A1.
Yeah, the Murdoch.
On the front of the box.
Yeah, the Murdoch colors. I mean, we were using Murdoch until they had Murdoch in Desert Storm.
Yeah.
I mean, before they could, paint everything tan, we were sending stuff over still in Murdoch. So,
Murdoch, yeah. So it's the Murdoch ones, and they do a Murdoch. So they're nice set of paints actually because they're for the airbrush as well as for paint brushes. So it's it's a set of Vallejo Model Air which are really nice, and the stuff with the wheel set was really good. So I was able to get what I think look really good, sort of effects on the tires and stuff. And I also picked up some Vallejo environmental acrylics, like wet effects.
Mm-hmm.
And European splash mud. So what I did on the Humvee was take a brush and a cocktail stick, a toothpick, and flick the brush over the stick to give a splat effect on the side of the wheels and on the sides of the paneling as well.
It's like mud and dirt and things like that.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, those Vallejo sets I highly recommend it. I just bought 3 this week for weathering, for different things. And then I bought one of their airbrush sets. They're actually quite handy. And then I like how they have instructions on the back of the box.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So now I just have one very important question to quick ask real fast. All right, between me, Chris, and Ralph. Okay, G, I need you to look over and check. Have we put Dawn to sleep yet, or is she still conscious?
I'm still here. I'm listening. I'm soaking it
we
all
will we will try harder. We will not stop until you are completely zonked out.
Now I do have a question, because I've got some airbrush thinner and some airbrush flow improver, because I'm going to be using my standard Vallejo paints in the airbrush. Which one will help? Because the standard Vallejo ones aren't really airbrush ones, they're not the Model Air. It's the standard traditional airbrush. Which one to use? So will it be the flow improver or the thinner in the airbrush to thin them down and use them properly?
Oh, to actually shoot the paint through the brush?
Yeah, through the brush.
I would say the thinner, but when it comes to airbrushing, experimentation is your friend.
Yeah.
I mean, never, ever shoot your first blast of paint at the model. Always have either some junk hanging around, or some cardboard or something, and try it at different, I'm not sure exactly what kind of airbrush you're using, but try it at different distances with the nozzle to your target to get different consistencies or whatever. I've used thinner. I've overdone it into where my stuff got very spider webby and started to drool down the side. It's, that's not good at all. But again, not enough thinner, and before you know it, you start to clog up your brush, and then you get more spattering problems. So again, it's really going to be experimentation.
I have to agree with Jim. Thinner is important.
Yes.
Yeah, it's just because you see online, I checked on YouTube, and one guy recommended thinner, one guy recommended flow improver, and it's like,
I honestly don't know what the difference is.
That could be because of what brush they're using too. What airbrush are they using? Because some people find the thinner works better, and some find the flow aid works better.
Yeah, it's just because I'm going to have to thin down the grey black that I've got in the Vallejo paints, because I'm going to go back to my conversion jobs of my little birds. I know that's been on the hold for a little bit, so I'm going to go back and finish my first little bird off conversion, and I need to go over the body with a grey black. Now I primed it black and it looks fine, but I want to go over with a grey black as well, just to get rid of that solid colour of black that you sort of see on them. And then
now here's another very important question. When I ran across this with my Heinz when I was doing my Heinz for Team Yankee. When you're priming your helicopters black, how is it that you overcome the temptation to leave it that way and feel like Airwolf Squadron? I had these Heinz as all black, and I was like, damn, I so want to just leave them like this. I don't want to put the actual Afghanistan camouflage on there.
Yeah, but what's the Airwolf theme running through your head when you were doing it? Was it Airwolf or was it Blue Thunder, Jim? Come on.
Oh no, definitely Airwolf. Sorry, Airwolf greater than Blue Thunder. That's one of those Coke versus Pepsi questions. That's always Airwolf.
Definitely, isn't it? And then of course I picked up got some Spectre minis for possibly I'm going to do when second edition Spectre comes out. I've had a chat with Carl, and we're going to try and arrange doing some filming, an actual battle report, and a talk about the second edition rules. So I've got my force, which is going to be this 4-man team with the dog and the Humvee, and the off-4 I planned, which is a scenario idea I put up on Spectre as well, was a meeting between a Russian arms dealer who's got 4 members of the PMC or ex-GRU or KGB operators as his bodyguards, so they would probably be down as also being elite, but I haven't decided yet. And the the model's the Sheik, so he's probably like a high up member of the terrorists, and with his bodyguard. Now, I wouldn't make them militia, and I wouldn't make them, trained. These were, they're elite soldiers, so I'll probably put them down as professional. And he's got like a 6-man protection squad with a tentacle, and they're buying a weapon from the Russian. So the idea for the train piece for that is a cargo container with the door open, and using the laptop from the Spectre Mini's drone controller Taliban member that they have, because they did a drone for the opposition, on top of a crate with some wires going into the container, and in the container will either be possibly something like a nuclear warhead or something like that, but the cables just denote there was something in there, and that was going to be like the control, the piece that's like a piece of terrain there. So I've got that sort of idea.
Awesome.
It's either going to be the mission, I thought, was either going to be a HTV, the Spec Ops team are going in there to kidnap the Sheik, and they've stumbled across this arms deal, or it was going to be a straight kill, capture, or stop them from using the nukes or destroying it. So, it depends how we want to play it out.
It's awesome.
Sounds good. Jim, you're up.
Hobby for me is going to be a very short segment. Pretty much a lot of my hobby work has been pretty much stalled for either writing or some video production that we'll talk about a little later. I've been, it's almost going to be embarrassing. On the way to work recently, I had to stop and get gas, and I go into the little convenience gas mart, and they're selling these little, they're almost like a Lego knockoff. These little, like the hero blocks or mega blocks, whatever they call them. And they have these little figures for Halo. So I guess these would be like slightly larger than Infinity size, so like 35 millimeter, maybe 40 millimeter, if they were gaming miniatures, which obviously they're not. But the detail on these miniatures are actually really awesome. I keep calling them miniatures. On these toys are really actually pretty awesome. They're like $4 a piece. They come in like 20 different varieties. They come with little weapons. And for such a small little toy, they have like 18 points of articulation. The heads, both shoulders, ball and socket joints, both elbows, both wrists, the hips, the knees, the ankles. I mean, they're really crazy as far as how you can pose them or whatever. So just for fun, I bought a couple and took them home, and then fell out of love with some of the colors because one of them had like this school bus orange kind of a thing. I don't know what he's supposed to be because I'm not terribly familiar with the Halo franchise. But I just was playing around. I started putting some like brick red paint on them, a little bit of a wash, Vallejo wash, and a little bit of a dry brush on them. And he came out looking really badass, especially for basically a $3 or $4 toy. So of course, next step in the saga, I totally break my New Year's resolution because I'm still not done with my bolt action army.
You broke it?
I started early in December 1st. We had this discussion, which means I get to break it early. So by the end of January, it's already shattered. So yeah, I went out and I bought a bunch of these silly little Halo guys. So most of them don't even need any paint at all. I just have to figure out how to base them. But I have no idea what I'm going to do with these. I mean, I'm not really into Halo. I don't have any of the aliens or monsters or anything in the franchise. So I don't know, like special forces, sci-fi skirmish combat or something eventually.
Jim, they make Black Ops as well for those little figures.
I saw Command Call of Duty.
Because I can see some right now. My son has got a bunch sitting on his shelf of his favorite characters from Black Ops.
Yep. So you know what I'm talking about. Those things are insanely articulated. They have like I might be exaggerating. They have at least a dozen articulation points.
Yeah. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, they've got a Call of Duty set. I'm looking on Google here because I've seen them before, and Amazon sell them. Urban Strike, Call of Duty set. There's a sniper team, Jim.
See, this isn't good. This is not good because you guys are on the site now. You guys are on the site now.
There is a Humvee.
You guys are on the site now, which means you're looking at the prices, and now you know how much money I've dumped into this ridiculous little project. So at the store they were like $5.
Oh yeah, the thing, but the vehicles are like there's a little bird.
Awesome. Dawn, what have you been up to?
Nothing historical. Sorry, that's gonna be the hang up there. I'm lost.
Ah.
I'm lost in fantasy land for sure. So, I've been eyeing my Harry Potter miniatures lately. So, but I'm fearful about whether I want to try to paint them or if I want to turn them over to a skilled painter. I wonder who that might be,
I don't know.
and end up with something that I'm going to really be happy with. I know I have to get braver at some point with the painting. I'm just not
Hold
sure I
on a
want to
second.
do it with those.
Harry, I'm not 100% familiar with Harry Potter. Harry Potter, that takes place. I know it takes place in England. It takes place when in England, though? Like the 60s, 70s, 80s?
Now.
Now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that technically makes it modern wargaming. So
Yeah.
welcome to the tribe.
Loophole.
Welcome
Okay,
to the
I suddenly
tribe.
feel much better. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, no, really, that's
Dawn,
been it
that's
for
the
me.
same, by the way, because I got some Night Models Batman miniatures.
Yes.
I got the Arkham. I got like the Arkham Asylum set. I got some of the Arkham Asylum and Arkham City miniatures from the PC game or
Nice.
the game. And the last thing I got was the Batman Arkham Knight, which is the one in the armored, the sort of the brand new powered armor version,
Yeah.
or the armored version that they did in the game. And I was scared of painting it until I started putting some paint down on it.
Yeah. All
It's
right.
very
What
Interesting.
characters from Harry Potter do you have in your collection, Tom?
Almost all of them.
Okay.
I've gone all in. I mean, I said this is probably going to be a range that I'm going to be committed to having all of the miniatures. So,
There you go.
and but
Awesome.
you know what, Chris, to your point about the Batman stuff, they're very Ralph. Sorry, they're very tricky. In that the last batch that I got from them, they had a miniature of the month that was one of the Batman models. And of course, it's awesome and it's a Joker. And I thought, I don't need to start another thing, but they're not dumb, so they conveniently included in that. And I'm like, oh, that's nice, shiny, So
And you liked the Batman game.
I do. I loved the Batman game. Yeah.
Which version of the Joker?
Oh, good question. Do you remember?
Is it from Arkham Asylum? Is it the Arkham Asylum
Yes, I
Batman?
think you're right. I think you're right.
Then it's a recent version, Jim, but the voice,
Okay.
because it's a video game, is
Yeah.
voiced by Mark Hamill.
Yeah, Mark
That's
Hamill
the
is
one.
famous for that. Yeah.
Mark Hamill voices the Joker.
He also
Mark
did it
Hamill's
in
my
the,
Joker. Heath Ledger.
He also did the voice acting in that for the. Correct me if I'm wrong. In the 1990s animated series.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
So.
Anything else there?
Um.
All right. Well, to finish this portion out, I'm still working on the SOCR boat and crew. Getting close. And then
Still.
Well, I don't have a lot of time like you all do. Between
Yeah.
work, finishing my degree, my other job, there's only so much time. And then I'm starting to work on the razors from Spectre. Boy, there are a lot of parts on that little thing. A lot of parts. So I'll be doing.
But it's a nice kit.
It is a very nice kit, and that is probably going to be. Well, it is going to be the upcoming Present Arms episode. And again, I apologize to everybody for last week with our snowstorm and really, really cold weather, like negative 50 degrees Fahrenheit, negative 34 Celsius, or vice versa, whatever it is. Us heathens here in the United States, we don't know metric. So our internet went down, so I couldn't broadcast. So we'll get it back up, and we're probably going to change the time to 7 p.m. Central Time, which is 1 a.m. England time, GMT.
Yeah, 6 hours difference.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing that. But I also, on top of that, I'm looking for ideas because I want to do a Present Arms future episodes on designing and building a game table for some kind of miniature battle, which Jim and I and everybody's talked about. We might tie into future episodes of OpCenter, which Jim will talk about here shortly. So that's kind of what I've been working on. Hopefully we can start picking up some more hobby time here. So
Awesome.
let's roll into the news, shall we? Spectre is still on a roll. They've been leading the headlines in our news sections for several episodes now, and they just dropped another vehicle. Ralph, you want to take us through that one?
Yeah, Spectre in their lovely wisdom dropped the JLTV this past week, which looks absolutely stunning. It comes with you can get for it as well as the vehicle itself. You buy additional turrets, and they drop all that I can describe as a 30mm remote turret. It's called the RWS Land Warfare Turret, which is a 30mm cannon with a 7.62mm machine gun, and it's a javelin on the side as well.
I was going to say,
turret.
All right, so just to kind of get a high level for people on the podcast, the JLTV is Joint Light Tactical Vehicle. It's manufactured in the United States. It's being used by Army, Special Forces, and the Marine Corps, believe it or not. And it's also being kind of sent out to a bunch of our allies and other client states, individual buyers, not individual buyers, other nations who are buying this from the defense contractor. In a roundabout way, this is going to be the replacement for the Humvee. So it's a four-wheeled vehicle, because I don't know if other people may not have a picture of this. It's a four-wheeled light armored vehicle. I stress light. By no means is it like an APC or an IFV, but it's basically an up-armored, bigger, hulkier, nastier Humvee. Then, of course, they can add all the attachments and turrets that Ralph is talking about.
Is that, man?
Yeah, it's got Marpap on as well. So what was that, Chris?
I said, is it made by Oshkosh? Or who made?
Oh, I'm not sure who actually creates it. It is Oshkosh.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Actually, there's a collection of them, isn't there? There's Oshkosh, there's Lockheed Martin, and there's AM General do them. So, but yeah, the Spectre. I mean, they've been teasing pictures of this over the past probably 3 weeks, I think, on their Instagram and their Facebook page, and they launched it this past week. And Stephen did an amazing job. I mean, the sculpt is absolutely incredible. They actually put a size comparison against Humvee and the BTR. Is it an 82 they've done, or is it the BTR 90? It's the 82, isn't it? And it is the biggest vehicle that Spectre have put out, and it'll be in resin as well. So it's a very nice.
The has it next to a
kit.
Razor.
Yes.
That's not a fair comparison.
That's so tiny.
So this remote weapon system they have on this vehicle, it kind of makes me think, when some of those, I don't necessarily fit in that category, but like my younger siblings and my kids, when you used to yell at them for playing all the video games all the time.
Oh, yeah.
Now look what they're doing. You sit inside a vehicle with the joystick and a button, and you can operate a big old weapon system from inside with the joystick. So it's just an old video game.
There's a little bit of history to that. I mean, America has a long I don't want to say history again, but America has a long history with this kind of thing. The Mark II fragmentation grenade from World War II served well during World War II in Korea, but sooner or later we switched to what's the Mark 67 fragmentation grenade, which was specifically designed to be the exact weight, shape, and size of a major league baseball. Because they figured back in those days, every American boy knew how to throw a baseball. It was no accident that they designed the grenade to be specifically like that. And there's a reason why the drone program, you go out to Fort Whitman or whatever, Whitman Air Force Base out in Missouri, where our drone program is mostly centered. And you're like, wow, why is it that these drone controllers all look like PlayStation controllers? There's a science to that, and there's a reason for that. And they're definitely following through on that philosophy.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's just you look at this thing, and I mean, it's like a 30mm cannon, a 7.62mm machine gun. Yeah, that's some serious firepower. And then they'll just shove a javelin on the side for good measure. I mean,
well, that's
It's
good
a
because
higher
have you ever
platform.
actually tried to
You know,
carry a
without-
javelin?
Yeah.
Javelin started off as a
no, I know
infantry-
they're rather heavy.
quote unquote infantry anti-tank guided weapon system. I don't know what infantry
Yeah.
they're talking about. If there's like a brigade of storm giants running around in the U.S. military, I don't know about. But
Yeah.
those things are big and heavy, and even the Dragon wasn't terribly man portable back in the day. But again, this just seems like another progression in a general trend in the development of modern warfare over the decades. So
Yeah.
back in World War II, Korea and Vietnam, there was the Jeep. And the Jeep was supposed to be a utility vehicle that you could drive around and basically get from one place to another without walking. Give us 100,000 of these things, and it's basically going to be the basic utility vehicle for the military. Along comes the 1980s. They want a replacement for that. Let's come out with the Humvee. And the Humvee, as originally designed, was just supposed to be a replacement for the Jeep. Fine. The problem is, once we get out of the 1980s, you get into these smaller conflicts. This is post-Desert Storm, Somalia, the Balkans, and so on, where America gets involved in more and more of these urbanized conflicts. Before you know it, you start seeing the Humvee being used as a combat vehicle. It was never meant to be that. And you see these nightmare scenarios like Black Hawk Down, where these Humvees are getting chewed up by heavy Soviet, PKM machine guns and RPGs. Well, no crap, that's gonna happen. This thing isn't armor plated. It's not meant to be a combat vehicle. At the same time, with modern warfare progressing to the point where it's more and more non-kinetic warfare, asymmetrical warfare, low-intensity warfare in these little places where you can't drive a tank down the street. Not everyone can walk around with a Bradley or an Abrams or, all these other vehicles. You need these small, light, you need a middle of the ground. It needs to be bigger than a Humvee and more chunky than a Humvee, more able to stand up to actual firepower and put out firepower. At the same time, it can't be an Abrams for political reasons, for financial reasons, for tactical reasons. The streets aren't big enough for a damn Abrams half the time. And no, this isn't Stalingrad. You can't just bulldoze the buildings down because people actually live there. These are people you're trying to get in on your side. Also, people get scared when they see an Abrams on the street. And I'm not saying that the JTLV isn't scary looking, but compared to an Abrams, again, it's all these social, political, cultural reasons. This JTLV seems like a big addition to where the Army and also the militaries of a lot of our allies are looking for that middle of the road, kind of a solution that's going to help us out in decades to come.
As long as it works.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's a big four-wheeled vehicle.
Yeah.
It's Gravedigger, the monster truck, joined the Army. And
America. That's all I got to say.
There you go.
America.
There you go.
All right. So next in the news, we have a little bit about some new show somewhere. Yeah, this thing called OpCenter. What do you think, Jim?
OpCenter is this new show that this guy has started. This guy talks way too much. He thinks he knows everything, and turns out that no, seriously. OpCenter,
he's right.
Yeah, OpCenter is a yeah, he's right that he talks too much. No, OpCenter is a new video series that we're coming out with here on SITREP. That's going to sort of take it's kind of bookshelf into our schedule on weeks between when we put out our actual bi-weekly podcasts or semi-weekly podcasts. So it's going to be a short video series where we're coming out with content relating to a historical and command tactical level viewpoint of modern warfare. And we're defining modern warfare as everything after 1945. So we're starting off with our first episode is now up on tabletop.com, on YouTube. It's going to be going up soon on our other platforms. It's on Twitter. Correct me if I'm wrong, G. It's eventually going to go up on Facebook and Podbean as well, we hope.
Yep, and it's on Twitch as well.
Oh, awesome. Yes, check it out on Twitch. So, again, we're starting off with a four-part video series on the Arab-Israeli wars. And our first part was about the 1956 crisis in the Suez. This is between the British, the French, the American. I'm making all kinds of mistakes today. The British, the French, the Israelis, and, of course, the Egyptians. We won't go into the details, there's a 28-minute video you can check out if you want to get into the details. But we are looking at both operational level gaming, command tactical level gaming, and conflicts. We're going to go forward in the weeks to come with the 1967 Six-Day War, the 1973 Yom Kippur War, and the last part will run from 1982 Peace for Galilee and running forward up to the present day. All the conflicts and potential conflicts that we might see in the Arab-Israeli war kind of area going forward. After that, the field's kind of wide open. So one thing I did want to ask about here in the podcast is everyone listening, if you have a potential subject that you would like to see, again, we're going to cover modern military wargaming for everything after 1945. It's a real world show as far as, reality, real issues, actual conflicts that have really taken place. We might do some near future stuff going forward, but for now we're sticking with more of a historical content. If anyone has a particular conflict that they would like to see featured on the show, let us know, and we'll definitely add it to the list. So far, we've had some requests for the Falklands, for the conflict in Aden, and a couple others. So we'll have to see which one gets the most support, and that might be our content subject matter going forward.
Sounds awesome. It's a good series. If you haven't checked it out, make sure you check it out on one of the platforms. Jim did a really nice job on putting it together. It's really good, and it's gotten a lot of positive feedback on it. All right, so there's another.
So, guys.
Go ahead, Chris. Sorry.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, thanks very much.
I had just had news drop while we were speaking. Blacksite has posted pictures, and I've put it up on our Facebook page of the cargo ship.
Oh no!
It is 4 feet long, and it is modular, and it can be reconfigured as needed. And it's currently slated for release next Friday, February 8th. And it looks like $115 US.
Son of a.
And I have posted the link up on our page.
It looks really good.
That really does. That looks astounding. And of course, have you spec that minis?
Wow, that looks really good.
Now, just for the benefit of those. For the benefit of those playing the home game, why, Gianna, are you so upset about this new release?
Well, because I've been...
Are you there?
Yeah, I'm here. So, my...
Uh-oh.
Guys hear me?
Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay, sorry about that.
Yeah.
So, I have been kicking around a design very somewhat similar to this. But different. Mine's an actual. This is a container ship, but mine would actually have multi-level cargo holds as well as the pilot house and the. So you would be able to go for below decks and have cargo containers on the deck. So this is a really nice one. It just seems like this is the second company that's come out with one, and mine's still in the design process. Son of a biscuit. So
oh no,
that's all right.
The thing is with the Blacksite stuff as well is it's a bit like foreground. It's all pre-colored.
Oh, that's pre-colored
so
like that?
Blacksites. Yes. Yeah.
Oh no.
Yep. I think it is definitely from what I was seeing on the Blacksite stuff, especially the stuff that's up on Spectre. It is all pre-colored.
Wow.
I could be wrong. I might be completely wrong.
I believe you're right.
But yeah. The other thing as well is the deal that they're doing with Spectre. So in the UK, they're Spectre going to be importing the Blacksite stuff to the UK, and the rest of anybody else that wants to get it through Spectre.
Yep, sure can.
It's actually really good for the UK from point of view of getting a hold of it. But if you order the bank, they do a bank Blacksite, and the bank looks really good. I mean, it's like It's got the vault and everything in it and all that. You get a security guard with holding a slushie.
Slushy.
Or whatever large beverage drink you want to call it, and a stack of money as a special miniature if you pre-order the bank from Spectre.
Nice, very nice. All right, Chris, full battle rattles coming out the vehicle as well, aren't they?
Yeah, they're about to finally release their Lav 3. It should be out pretty soon. Like, I'll be posting updates as I get more information from Alex. I'm hoping we can get Alex on the show here to talk about it. The model looks phenomenal. The detail just looks incredible. Just all the little details that you can add to the vehicle. I'm pretty sure it's out before the end of the month. Before the end of February, but I will check with Alex at Full Battle Rattle and get a confirmed date, and then I'll post it up on the page. But it looks really good. I'm looking forward to getting mine.
Awesome. So we need to start, when we get some of these products in, to start doing some breach and clear quick review episodes.
Yeah.
So people can get a firsthand look at how they look outside of, Facebook posts. So that's very exciting news. So
yeah,
on another subject, there's a Kickstarter. Is it started? No, 9th of March for a Vietnam game. Now, it's different than what I thought it was. It's weird Vietnam War.
Yeah. Black Sun.
Yeah.
I thought it was just good old fashioned Hueys and Viet Cong and and Americans and Australians, but there's werewolves in it.
Yep.
Oh Lord.
Werewolf. It looks like fishmen as well.
Yeah.
I think the reason this caught my eye was because it's a collection of 28mm Vietnam miniatures.
Yeah.
More than you think. Not so much interest in the We Are War stuff.
What was that sound? What was that? I just heard something. Oh, that was Ariskane's heart breaking right there. We all just heard it, folks. We heard that snap.
Yeah.
Yeah. I was more interested in the Vietnam, the US and Viet Cong minis than the We Had War stuff. Because there's very limited 28mm Vietnam minis out there. Assault Group do some.
This is true. There isn't too much out there for it.
They actually look pretty good. I'm looking at their site. They actually look pretty good. Outside the fishmen. I mean, if that's your thing, it's your thing. I don't want to knock anybody's stuff, but if you're looking for purely 28mm Vietnam era sets, they do look pretty good. So yeah. So there is potential there outside of that. 28 mil is a tough scale for a lot of modern wargaming because the ranges get too big and the battles get too big. But Vietnam being such an infantry-based game, usually in close either urban or jungle terrain, i.e. the tables get very small. I think, Vietnam could be very. I'm actually surprised there aren't more 28mm Vietnam releases and ranges out there. Yeah. I think it's a good war, or a good conflict for 28mm.
Yeah, I'm guessing as well as when Warlord released their Korean source book, that'll open up lots of different 28mm options as well. Yes, it's quite close to World War II, but you're still going to start seeing slightly newer technology coming through. Jim, you probably will correct me on this. But because I know they did the 12. I know Warlord did their 12 days of Christmas or after Christmas, and one of the things that dropped was it looked like, I think, a chieftain. I could be wrong, but from that post 47 50s version of it, more than the late war 40s version.
We might be talking about a Centurion, but yeah.
Yeah, that's the one, yeah, the Centurion.
It's the 20-pounder version of the Centurion, the early Centurion, and the North Koreans and the Chinese were terrified of it. Yeah.
That was a good tank. That tank gets a bit of a
doing that. So.
Gets a bit of a bad rep, I think, because one of the only times it was ever used is with the Royal Jordanian Army. We were actually talking about this on tabletop. The Royal Jordanian Army used the 20-pounder Centurion. At the same time, the Israelis had already upgraded to the 105 millimeter Centurion. So the only time it really gets into heavy combat, especially tank-on-tank combat, is there wasn't a whole lot of tank-on-tank combat there wasn't a whole lot of tank-on-tank combat in Korea, obviously. A little, but not much. But yeah, the only time that the 20-pounder version of the Centurion really gets into combat is, again, these battles on the West Bank, Jordan, and Israel. We'll actually be talking about this in part 2 of the OpCenter. Another plug for that. Is, again, by that time, it's already being superseded by the Israeli 105 millimeter version. So it gets a bad reputation, or an overshadowed reputation, perhaps. But it is still a Centurion. And a 20 millimeter is nothing to sneeze at, especially when you're up against, North Koreans in 1950 to 53. What were they equipped with for tanks? We're talking about T-34-85s, and a Centurion with a 20 millimeter gun, or I'm sorry, a 20-pounder gun, is going to put a hole straight through a T-34-85 with no problems whatsoever.
Yeah.
Jim, is there a good game that would demonstrate that, to your knowledge?
Hold on a second. To demonstrate what exactly?
That type of, the Centurion with the 20-pounder, versus the T-34s or similar.
A miniature game that does
it could
that.
Be miniature, or it could be hex counter, any type of war game.
Well, hex and counter, it's definitely the Arab-Israeli Wars, which we feature heavily in the OpCenter. At least these first 4 episodes. Anyone who checks out those videos will see us talk about that game pretty heavily. Again, it's not a miniature game, but it's that nice bridge between the high-level, presidential level operations game, and then down to the sergeant in his under the helmet view kind of a tactical, man-on-man game.
Sure. Okay.
But it would be that, and it would be again. I'm sorry. You know what's probably going to do it? The new Flames of War. Sorry about this. The new Battlefront release. I haven't actually checked out that particular tank in specific, but I do have a copy of the book. I can actually look it up after the podcast. The 1967 and 73 Fate of a Nation release from Battlefront.
Nice. Okay.
So somebody at Battlefront has, really done an amazing thing. I fully recommend them for the Gaming Nobel Prize in 2019 or whatever.
Wow.
Yeah, seriously. If there was a company that has really done something right recently, it's as far as modern wargaming, I say it's Battlefront. And what they've done is when they re-released Fate of a Nation, they finally kind of clued into the fact that 1967 isn't the most interesting war from a tactical wargaming perspective. And they've expanded it into 1973. If you go back a couple episodes in our podcast, we were talking, G, about what would you like for Christmas,
right, if
you could wave a magic wand. Literally, Battlefront did it. And I almost swear I wasn't cheating. I wasn't looking at something ahead of time or anything. They literally came out with what I asked for like 2 months later. And it's this new Fate of a Nation release. So it's Fate of a Nation, Arab-Israeli Wars. The initial Fate of a Nation release was strictly 1967, and they ran it as a Flames of War sequel. Now they're re-releasing it, and it's part of their Team Yankee rollouts instead of Flames of War, World War II. So it's a Team Yankee prequel as opposed to a Flames of War sequel. And in doing so, they've expanded also into the 1973 war. These 20-pounder, how we got on this tangent, these 20-pounder Jordanian Centurions are going to be used one battle they were in was Battle of Jenin on I think the 4th or 5th day of the 6-day war, where they had to fight. They were on their way to fight some Israeli Centurions. So you almost saw some Centurion versus Centurion battle. They also have to fight, believe it or not, Syrians in the Black September War in 1970. You see these Centurions with 20-pounder guns fighting Syrian T-55s. Not all the Arab Israeli wars are between Israel and the Arab states. Some of the Arab Israeli wars are between Arab states. A lot of people tend to forget that. So you do see this 20-pounder armed Centurion gun in combat in the Middle East, and you do see it. It's gonna. We saw the release on tabletop. They do have it. So as far as what game system would recreate that, I haven't looked at the cards yet, so I can't say for 100% certain. But my strong hunch would be towards Fate of a Nation, the new Team Yankee themed Fate of a Nation release from Battlefront.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sounds
So I'm going to take it back to Vietnam here for a second. Okay. This Black Sun release, I've been posting up on the page a build by the sculptor of Black Sun, Mr. Bob Murch, and it's a Cambodian ruined temple, and he's getting closer and closer to finishing it. And I recommend everybody go take a look at this Cambodian temple because it's amazing the work he's done on it. And he started out with a piece of aquarium scenery, and he went there. And on another note for Vietnam, when we were talking about manufacturers, Empress will be releasing a line of Vietnam War miniatures. I'll find the link, but I saw some U.S. Marines for Vietnam.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah. So that's another thing. So I think we're going to see some more Vietnam coming out for a range from different manufacturers.
nice.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, that's good. It's nice to see that they are kind of revisiting Vietnam, because for a while there, Vietnam was hot and heavy. Especially what was it, mid to late 80s, early 90s when all the movies came out and stuff like that.
Sure, Dookie.
So that's awesome. All right. Just one other quick little news item. The guys over at Miniature Building Authority / Tabletop Simulations, they're coming out with their HEMTs, all their vehicles, and they look really good. I got to see a couple of them. Was it last year at Adepticon? Yeah. Kirk showed me some. And so he's got his own set coming out, and he has a JLTV as well. And so if you're looking to add vehicles to your game, there's definitely a whole bunch of offerings right now. So at some point we'll get Kirk on the show as well. So let's transition into our topics for today. Repurposing wargame systems. Too often miniature wargaming, especially modern mini wargaming. So whose topic was this idea?
This is what I added to the running order.
Okay. Why don't you take us through it, Jim?
Okay, so we were just trying to come up with a topic that we could kick around on today's show. And one thing that I was thinking about was repurposing, again, put this out to the community and to our listeners. Do you guys ever feel the need to repurpose a game system to fit a different conflict that you're interested in recreating on your tabletop? And what kind of brought this up was, was our recent episode of the OpCenter. So in the OpCenter, episode 1, we're looking at the 1956 Suez Crisis, or the Sinai War. The part we're focusing on is between Israel and Egypt. The French and British part could almost be its own episode later. But the point is, there is no, to my knowledge, 1956 Sinai War miniature war game that somebody has put out. Even the Fate of a Nation release from Battlefront doesn't really cover the 1956 war. They focus on 67 and commendably, I'll say that again, the 1973 war. So, but there's nothing really out there for 56. So if you're going to create the 1956 table or 1956 war on your tabletop, how do you do it? Well, you go back to Flames of War is what I suggested in the video. And I won't go into everything because, again, it's in the video. Please check it out. But it's, can we use 1945 kind of weapons and units and miniatures and rules to kind of, post-date it a little bit, make some tweaks, and kind of bring about the, 1956 table? Or if you're interested in Korea, can you use 1945 weapons for especially the Americans and Soviets? Because that's pretty much what equipped the North Koreans and later the Chinese in that conflict. can you bring those two forces together and maybe come up with something? Too often, I find in modern miniature wargaming, again, stressing moderns, the wars are so small and so numerous that nobody ever comes out with a 1983 Grenada game or a 1982 Peace for Galilee game. There are generic kind of systems out there, force on force, skirmish, etc. Spectrum. But those aren't really written for a specific war in mind. And I was just curious to kick around the command team here and also put it out to the community as far as what kind of modifications you guys make to adjust for the accuracy, the narrative, and other kind of details to get either a generic kind of a modern wargaming system or a wargaming system that was built for another conflict and kind of repurpose that into your table and your specific project you have on your table at the time.
Well, I think part of go ahead, Ralph.
No, I was just thinking of that. Thinking of them. It's not so much repurposing the game, but using the game for a different setting. There's been a lot of community images and stuff on the Spectre Facebook page because of their agent set. So these are the guys, with the beanies and the Chris Vector and things like that. And people have been painting them up as Division agents, which the Division, for people who don't know, is a game by Ubisoft. There's a pandemic hit New York, and these people are sent in to see what's going on. So they're using this. Looks like they're going to be using the Spectre rules to create a tabletop version of this PC game. The other one that I know of that gets used heavily, and this is by Carl especially. Carl's a friend of the show. Is No End in Sight. It's a war game called No End in Sight. And I think him and one of the other guys, a group in the Northeast up here, used No End in Sight to do, I think it was the Falklands. They did a small battle from the Falklands. The old Carl uses it for his own Geordistan, as he calls it, campaign that he was going to start running. So it was a fake Middle Eastern country called Geordistan. I'm a Geordie, so yeah. And I think they used it for doing some stuff in Iraq as well. And they also created, and I don't know whether they ran the game, I might have, was a crossroads on the border of Ireland during the 70s. So it was like a small country road. You had 1970s cars and stuff like that. And it looks like it was an IRA attack on something. So they were using a game system. I'm not sure. I don't know if it was No End in Sight or something else to use it within that setting. So that type of thing I've seen done quite heavily.
G, were you going to add something to that?
I was just going to say, when it comes to, if you look at it from a marketing standpoint, if you pigeonhole to a certain, let's say, the Falcons or Grenada, you're limiting the system to just that time period, so it's a very limited release. If you go with a more generic overview system and then release era packets or scenario books or something like that, then you could drill down to those, conflicts and use rules and weapon stats that are, appropriate for that time and location. As far as
ambush. I'm sorry, go ahead.
As far as the nice thing about gaming is once you have a really good understanding of a rule set and you've played through it the way it's designed, for the most part, I think you can pretty much take it to wherever you want to go with it. So, some people are just perfectly happy playing with the rules the way they are. And then you have people that, such as yourself, Jim, and some of us else, I've talked about another game system that frustrates me about weapon ranges and things like that. That can't shoot across a bridge when they should shoot a mile, and and you tweak it to fit to what your needs are. So that'd be an interesting topic, for a chat. To see what people are out there, if they're doing home brews and scenarios and adjustments to the current rule systems.
So yeah, like Ambush Valley when they came, or sorry, Ambush Alley back when they were working with Osprey on the Force on Force series, they kind of had a basic generic system for modern post 1945 infantry combat, mostly infantry combat, and they came out with exactly what you're talking about: a Enduring Freedom source book, an Iraqi Freedom source book, a Fallujah source book. Vietnam, they had one called the Bush Wars for the Africa post-colonial conflicts. But then, okay, maybe they didn't have one for the Falklands, or maybe they didn't have one for Mogadishu or something. Actually, I think they did have one for Mogadishu, but they might have one. They might not have one for the specific conflict that you're talking about. Okay, that's perfectly fine. That's why they have a generic system. Use the generic system. I was just curious to see if anyone had any ideas about, okay, here's what I looked up, here's what I found. Is there a specific solution that we can use to kind of make sure that what used to be a generic system is now a perfect fit for the specific conflict that we're working on? 1956 Sinai War was literally lasted 100 hours. I'm not expecting anyone to come out with an entire, expanded universe, 50 books and a whole range of miniatures for the 1956 war. Meanwhile, we're working with the M50 Sherman. This is one of the Israeli upgrades. It has the French 75 hypervelocity gun in it. That gun was ripped off of the World War II Panther tank in design. So, okay, how do you create that in, say you're using Flames of War? Can you sit there with your card and you kind of have to make up your own card where you have, okay, I'm going to use the Easy 8 Sherman, the late war U.S. Sherman. That way you get the enhanced mobility, the wider tracks, and the up armored, more additional armor, especially on the front. But then you also take the range values, the penetration values, and the firepower values. This is your specific rules right out in the Flames of War from the late war German Panthers, and you stick them on. You kind of kit bash them rule wise. I'm not talking about miniature wise. Like you're literally kit bashing the rules at this point. You take that gun and you put it onto this up armored Sherman you have. Presto, you now have an Israeli M50 Sherman, rules wise. That's the kind of specific example that I was at least coming up with for how to take a game that was either generic or maybe written for a slightly different era and make it your own for the small niche conflict that you're trying to create for a specific project.
Yeah, I have seen several different Facebook groups that I belong to, wargaming ones, and I have seen quite a few people create homebrewed cards. Take Flames of War as an example, where they will recreate the card template, and then they will take, just like you were saying, this weapon from this that's now used on this, and they'll create a card for it. So
awesome.
The only thing is it tournament legal if you're one of those tournament players? There's a lot of people that like to play tournaments, but personally, I don't play tournaments. I just play for fun and enjoyment. So I personally don't care as long as everybody's in agreement. Especially if it's something realistic. Now, I'm not going to put a laser on a freaking tank. Hey, this is the M5000.
Why can't my M3 Steward carry a Rheinmetall 120 from a Leopard 2? Damn it! I mean, the gun weighs more than the tank.
Is that the Dr. Evil laser?
Yeah,
there you go.
So yeah, I mean that's the nice thing
laser
about,
beams.
That's the nice thing about wargaming. Unless you're at a button counter convention, you can pretty much do what you want. It's experimentation, right? It's the what ifs.
Absolutely.
It's.
I mean, if someone's going to run a tournament for the 1956 war, I'm there. I'm not holding my breath. And if I do go to that tournament, I will gladly use the units that they provide. But that's almost the point, is that nobody runs tournaments or writes books for that because it's such a small conflict. And in modern wargaming, so many of the conflicts are so small. There's 1,001 game systems out there for World War II because World War II was huge. There's not 1,001 conflicts out there for the 1982 soccer game war between Honduras and El Salvador.
Yeah.
So if you want to sit down and play a game in one of these other conflicts, you have to find the closest thing that you've got that's out there and then sort of kit bash rules from that point, I think.
Oh, I agree with you. I think it just opens up so much stuff, and as long as you got imagination and the energy to do it, and everybody agrees on it when you play a game, I don't see a problem with it. And I think it adds life to a game. You're not pigeonholed into playing that one system exactly, how it was designed. It could give it legs and extra life to play, at different eras and scenarios and weapons that aren't necessarily covered in the standard rules. So.
Yeah, I've seen that with Chain of Command. I know there was a modern version of Chain of Command, or Two Fat Loddies were working on a modern version of Chain of Command. There's one of the Bolt Action Facebook groups had somebody post up a modern adaptation of Bolt Action, and there's a Bolt Action Vietnam Facebook group which I'm on, which has players play using the Bolt Action rule set, but within Vietnam era. Now, I don't know whether that's because that whether that sort of fills the niche of, because there's not many game system out there, but it's still the sort of type of thing is the people are comfortable with that system and want to move it into different eras.
So a big part of it is just going to be because Bolt Action is so popular,
isn't it?
I mean, it's everywhere.
So that's awesome. So just moving into something else. So an idea that came up is when you do your OpCenter stuff, Jim, is to possibly produce army lists. So like when you were doing the demonstration of the one battle where the oh my gosh, it's totally escaped me, but you had your Israeli forces doing the push. It was tank on tank battle there. In those scenarios, maybe if we can print army lists to give people an idea, so if they want to take it and play it within the game, because I know you were simulating the battle, it wasn't necessarily a scenario within the game itself, because again, 1956 doesn't technically have its own game. Or so they just kind of have an idea of the army lists, and that way if they want to go, let's say, all right, I want to play it in 6mm miniatures, I can recreate that. Just, I don't know, what you think?
Absolutely. It would be, we'd have to come up with like what system we wanted to print the list for, obviously. My two suggestions would be, again, a Flames on War / Team Yankee hybrid, with the 1967 and 73 wars being the straight out Team Yankee releases out of Fate of a Nation version 2. But for the 1956 war, we could totally do something. Again, it would be mostly the vehicle types and like maybe what some of the rules should be. As far as the army lists go, that's right out of what was there historically.
Okay.
That's not any kind of a point system. That's not any kind of a, I mean, it's going to be balanced, but it's going to be asymmetrically balanced. The games we had with Damon in Arab-Israeli Wars show the Israelis absolutely steamrolling over forward positions of 6th Egyptian Brigade, 3rd Infantry Division at Kusiema, I think is the battle that you're mentioning there. But how you make that game work and still be fair with historical disparity of available forces and quality of forces is asymmetrical victory conditions. How fast can the Israelis steamroll? They're going to steamroll. How fast can they steamroll, and how many casualties do they take in the process? And that's where you can really challenge the Israeli player, as Damon found out to his cost. But sorry about that, Damon. I get to gloat once in a while. But I am rerunning that game in solitaire to make sure it's balanced, but I just want to make sure.
Awesome.
But the other suggestion might be GHQ micro armor, or because you mentioned 6mm is what made me think of that specifically. I have to get refamiliarized with those rules in order to come out with an army list that actually works within the system that we're publishing, or not. We're not publishing the system, but we're publishing the army list.
Right.
But in order to make it to where people who are familiar with that game system, I would actually find it useful, and not just background information. But those would be the two systems that I would probably go to at first, at least for 56. And then once you move forward into 67 and 73, we would definitely, I think, switch fully to the Fate of a Nation from Battlefront.
Perfect.
Because of the way they fixed it. And then after that, we go into future conflicts, and who knows? Again, question out to the community. What kind of conflicts would you like to see us cover on the OpCenter in future episodes?
Excellent. So I just kind of a thought. So we could have you publish or post a recommended scenario with the Army lists, based on whatever game system. So if somebody wanted to try and recreate one of the battles that you're talking about in the videos, here's what we recommend the system, and these are the kind of the Army lists that you would use, and then people can take it from there. So perfect. So I got to wake Dawn up.
Uh-oh. Hey, we finally succeeded.
So the reason why Dawn is on the podcast today is our second topic. How do you get someone who likes games to play historical, especially modern? Because as we know, Dawn does not play historical games, real life games. She likes the land of.
We kind of already disproved that. But okay.
Yes, you did find a bit of a loophole in there. But we've talked about this a lot before in that, and maybe this is generalities for my part, but to me, looking at modern or historical gaming, I'm totally not opposed to playing it, but I feel like not being respectful to it, in that, because I genuinely don't know what everything is. Like, am I stealing fun from somebody or from anybody else that you're trying to play a game with, because what I'm trying to do with things isn't based in fact? I mean, I don't know. It probably is kind of a strange thing to ask, but I know G made the comment earlier about like a button counting convention. Like, how important is that level of detail to people when you're playing a game, in terms of whether you're going to give slack to somebody like myself that maybe isn't well versed?
I think if you're dipping your toe into the water, shall we say,
yes,
which is technically what it would be, is if the person on the other side understands that, and all war gamers understand that, not the game that this person's joining might not be their initial cup of tea, I can't see them, being hyper critical on, oh, you wouldn't do this, you wouldn't do that, you wouldn't do that. It'd be more the fact is you can't do that within the rules,
right?
But that's the rule set itself has that restriction on. But creating a small 4-man special ops team going to rescue hostages, it's not. There's nothing in there that should be very daunting and should be very rules, constraining on what it is. You don't need to know a setting. You don't need to know history, especially current modern. So say from post First Gulf War, through the war on terror to where we are now. You don't need to know the ins and outs of the political background and things like that around it, and that's my own belief. I mean, I could be completely wrong and be yelled at lots, but I don't care. But that's where my head is at. It's at the end of it, I play war games because I enjoy war games. I enjoy doing this, and yes, there's some settings that I'm not really enamored with, and I did that, or I played that a long time ago, and I've moved on from there, and it's what happens. Anybody else? Go on, take over.
I would answer with 3 quick points on that. Number one, well, first of all, I agree pretty much everything with what Ralph just said. But as far as getting started in historical or modern historical and miniature wargaming, look, system is almost a non-issue. The background is a non-issue. Even the genre is a non-issue. I mean, I would play depending on the players that were there. If we were all having fun, I would play 40K. I know I just said that on air. I know. It depends on the players. I have had fun. I used to play D&D. I can't stand fantasy, but I used to play D&D back in the Marine Corps because the people that I was gaming with were fun. So if you've got the fun people, number one, because historical wargamers and modern historical, especially historical wargamers, do have a bit of a stigma. And I'm not ashamed to say it because it's somewhat self-inflicted. We do it to ourselves. Whereas, if somebody who is somewhat new to the genre tries to put an army on the table and maybe it's not 100% accurate, we start, twirling our mustaches and puffing on our pipes and, huff. How dare you put that on? Those are not the fun people that you want to be gaming with in the first place. So part one, just you gotta make sure that you find the right kind of fun people that are ready to accept you into their group. And to kind of build on that is point two. A quick way to make friends with a historical wargamer is to ask them to explain things to you. And they will stand there and explain things to you until you're literally ready to pass out. But they'll have a great time just explaining it to you. And what they'll do is that now you can base your army on what they're saying. And that has a two-sided benefit for you as a new player. Number one, you don't have to plow through hundreds of hours of research. And number two, if anything's wrong, you can blame the person because they're the one that told you that. And last but not least, to again reiterate what Ralph was saying, historical detail and accuracy matters more on the kind of levels that I play at, which may not be what you're interested in. The command tactical level, what brigade, what battalion, what regiment, where the hills were. When you're down at the level that Ralph likes to play at, 4 or 5 guys around a shipping container, does historical accuracy really matter? Could you use the same system for British commandos at Saint-Nazaire as you could for, Soviet or ex-Soviet FSB agents in St. Petersburg somewhere? The answer is yes. At that level of granularity, no one's written a history book about last Tuesday. So you could totally, not get too involved in the historical or the military accuracy with it if you go down to that level of small scale detail. But really the most important part is just finding the right people. The right people will, number one, know that you're new to it. They'll be happy to explain anything to you. In fact, if anything, you're going to have to tell them to shut up eventually. And you'll get all the information you need, and that is relevant to the exact game system that you've got on the table at the time.
Gotcha.
Very cool. All right, guys, we're about to the end of our show today. Couple of quick housekeeping things. We want to remind our prize winners. I haven't heard from you guys yet. Chris Moody, you are our Facebook 100 winner. You won a copy of Skirmish Engine. I sent you a message. Please reach out to us to claim your prize. And then David Maxwell, you are our YouTube 100 winner. You won a set of Games and Gears paintbrushes. We like those paintbrushes here. So congratulations to both of you for the prizes. And then last but not least, and we want to thank our Patreon sponsors. Yay!
Awesome.
Lawrence Townsend, thank you so much for your Patreon. Our anonymous donors. And then last but mostly not least, our new producer, Michael Bradshaw. Thank you very much for your support and welcome as a producer to our podcast. And remember, you can find us on Podbean, YouTube, Facebook, Apple Music, iTunes, Google Podcasts, Twitch, and especially our good friends over at ontabletop/beastofwar.com.
Absolutely.
So remember, you can find us on all those locations, and your support would be greatly appreciated if you decide to on Patreon. And we also have merchandise available. Ralph came up with a really nice design, and it's available on t-shirts, sweatshirts, cups, and many other items. So take a look at those as well. So
that's on Zazzle.com.
It's on Zazzle.com. Yep.
Okay,
Zazzle.com/SITREP podcast. Yes.
Awesome.
Buy merch.
Buy merch.
And prize winners, please contact G and claim your prize, because if you don't, Dawn is going to take the prize. You know how interested she is in starting miniature wargaming.
I'm so on it.
There you go.
I'll send both of them messages. I know both of them.
Okay, very good.
Yeah.
So thank you, everybody. Chris, thank you very much.
Yep.
And Ralph.
Yeah, thank you.
And
Thanks,
Jim.
guys.
As always.
And to our very special guest, and you were very entertaining. You really need to stop talking so much next time, Dawn.
I know. I'm sorry. See if you ever invite me again.
Until we see you next time, you are listening to the SITREP podcast. Take care.